Okay, hello and welcome to another episode of Hiring and Inspiring. Today's guest is Brad Eather. Brad is a recent business owner, former sales professional, and social selling expert. So I'm looking forward to catching up with him today, finding out how he is getting on his end, how the new business is tracking so far. A few months into the journey, and also picking his brains, finding out what he's sort of learned over the years in his career, all things sales, social selling, and whatnot. So, yeah, looking forward to get stuck into it. So, Brad, with that introduction, mate, welcome to the show. How are you getting on?
Good, mate. Thanks for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
It's great to have you here. So, as I said just now, let's start in the present. Your recent venture, you started it at the start of this year, I believe,
Yep. Yeah. So
January 2024. Business is called Tomorrow. Is that right?
yeah, tomorrow. I the sort of reason behind the name, I suppose, is that I sort of like to have a view on the future. So I think that things out there are changing, and selling is changing, and it's good to be prepared for tomorrow. So that's sort of where the name came from. It's quick. Yeah, ideation was just very quick and nimble on that one.
Like it. So, how is it going so far? 4 months in, how can you sum it up, the experience of it so far?
It's it's been a personal journey. The whole thing started as a bit of a personal journey for me. There's been a lot of twists and turns and hurdles to overcome. Pivoting, all that kind of stuff. But I've sort of landed on the trajectory that I want to go in, and it's working. So, I mean, you sort of meet me at a point where, 4 months into the journey, I last week was my first client. This week I've got two clients, another one onboarding next week, and two more in the pipeline. So it's like really exciting time for me at the moment. And I'm sort of buckling down to sort of focus on the next part of all the legwork's been done to get people into the channel, and now it's focusing on the customer experience and sort of developing the next part of my sales cycle so that I can improve for what's to come.
Talk to me about the business itself. What actually are you offering? What's the sort of the premise behind the business, I guess?
So it's sort of it's probably best to go back to sort of the reason or how I got to this point,
Sure.
because that explains sort of the offer. So, from a business journey, for me, business sort of started when I was really young. I was about 14. I didn't actually get paid by anybody else until I was 24. So I started off teaching guitar, and doing some odd jobs, gardening and all of that kind of stuff. And then when I went to university, studied audio engineering, I started an events company. And that took me through to 24, when the Sydney lockout laws came in, and pretty much that wiped out that business venture for me overnight. So at that point in time, I went back to university and started studying digital communications and culture, which essentially just gave me an overall of 2.5 years of how we're communicating online, and the cultures around it. I suppose there's a lot that went into it that I sort of put into my practice today. But from that experience, what essentially, after finishing up the events business, I landed in the commercial AV industry, where I spent sort of the next 6 years in relationship account-based type sales roles, where it was very like heavy on, focused on relationships and maintaining relationships, and building pipeline through through relationship management, essentially. Fast forward, I end up in 2 years in the UK. And at the tail end of that, COVID hit. And due to some circumstances, out of my control, I had to make the decision to move back to Sydney, where I'm originally from. But I didn't have a job, nothing like that. And so there was nothing really tying me to Sydney anymore. So I opened up the job search nationally.
Yep.
And ended up in South Australia, a place that I'd never been before. And I didn't have any existing network. But the reason I came down here was because I had this sort of what seemed like an amazing opportunity. There was a global audio-visual distributor coming into the Australian market. I was going to be the first sales employee in a national sales role. So I took it because it seemed like there was a lot of financial backing in the back end, and at that point in time I was like, world's your oyster, right? But obviously COVID was going on, borders were shut, traditional sales couldn't happen because I couldn't travel across borders, and my network was pretty slim. I'd been away for 2 years and didn't have the relationships that I once had if I'd just been, moving. Most of them were in Sydney anyway. So I sort of was thinking, like, how do I get this off the ground? And I went back to my digital communications degree and thought, how do I use what I know from my education and apply it to what I'm doing right now to get some sales in the door? Because the challenges that I was facing at that point in time, right, there's no brand recognition for this company in Australia, and the brands that we were selling into the market we were introducing them to the Australian market, and no one really knew who they were. So I had plenty of challenges. So essentially, I took to LinkedIn, started building a network and selling into that network, and that's where the social selling journey started. Fast forward, there was an acquisition that essentially led to the company withdrawing from Australia, Asia, and Latin America overnight due to external pressures in the market, and I got made redundant, which sent me down a bit of a personal spiral into a depression that lasted about 18 months. And it got pretty bad. Like, I jumped between some companies, and they didn't necessarily align with the new sort of approach that I had on selling. And I sort of got, in the background as well, like the industry as a whole was dealing with COVID as well. So you're talking about hybrid workplaces, the nature of workplaces changing, and what was traditionally an AV job, the convergence of IT and AV essentially ended up being accelerated into a hyper competitive market. And I felt like the industry as a whole that I was working for was losing control of the narrative, and we were losing out to IT companies. And essentially I got very frustrated with it and, decided to step away. At the beginning, so like this is where we find myself at the beginning of this year, really. And at the beginning, I took a step away, left the place that I was working in to try to figure out what I was going to do for myself. And what I did was essentially take myself to a park for like 3 hours, and I just did an audit on myself. Like, what are my strengths and weaknesses? What can I add? What can I give value to? And set myself the task of just starting something. And my only ambition at that point in time was give yourself 9 months and move the needle. Like, just whatever you do, don't end up in 9 months at the same place that you're at now. And what I did was I bought some headsets and started making content about headsets, because in my mind at that time I was thinking, you know what, like I'm frustrated with the way that the AV industry is handling itself, and I want to change that narrative. But the result was that I made a profile on LinkedIn. I was making content about headsets, and I didn't really have an offer. You know, my only objective at that point in time was to book as many meetings as possible. So I was, you know, at one point, like literally the headset dude selling headsets, booking a meeting every day with directors, founders, CEOs of companies, and just using it as a discovery call to find out what challenges they were having, what the actual state of their industries were at the second, and where I fit into that picture. And what I discovered through that is one of the major things that was the same across industries and everything was people and businesses struggling to align sales with marketing activities, because salespeople are taking to the internet to do the social, you know, personal branding and all that kind of stuff. And I was just thinking to myself, all right, like I've got experience here, I've got a solution. And so I started putting down my thoughts on paper, and that's sort of how I started doing the social selling. So to come back to your original question, what I do is I teach people my ethos around social selling. So that's everything from digital communicating online, digital, a little bit of marketing, sales, the user experience, and I just guide them through based on what they're doing on a similar journey, and essentially try to change their mindset in a way that turns passive scrolling on the platform into productive sales activity without the expense of taking up more of their time. So that is the long-winded answer.
I love it. What a journey.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. So when you're speaking to the client, since you've got it up and running, and since you've started talking to them about their social media and social selling strategies, what are some of the main problems that they're telling you that they have, or the main problems that you're aiming to fix? What is the sort of typical conversation, or is there a typical conversation when you're speaking to your clients about what they're trying to do with their social selling strategies?
There's no typical conversation. Everybody's struggling with something slightly different. But the one thing that I find is the common ground is the communication piece. Because my philosophy on this is not necessarily a marketing strategy, it's a sales strategy. If you have a look at my network, you know, I don't have thousands of followers. It's outbound activity. But people struggle with communicating, making that initial communication and making it valuable, right? So the way that I sort of like to approach it, and this is how I sort of go about sort of changing the mindset, is like, instead of pitching a service, approach it from a friendly space. So imagine you're at Christmas dinner, right? And your brother, sister invites a partner over that you haven't met yet, but they've been dating for like 6 months, and you get plonked down next to them and you're curious. Yeah. You're like, all you want to do is find out who they are, where they come from, what's their worldview, and have a conversation. And if you can take that mindset and apply it to that initial interaction that you have, from a position of curiosity and a position where you actually care, like, you're off to the races at that point. Like that's that's the main takeaway that I think people are struggling with, and the mindset shift that needs to happen.
Yeah, so that's what I was just going to say. That mindset shift is something I know you talk about quite a lot. It's your that's your solution. You're not changing what you know you are, but like you're changing how salespeople go about and it's mainly their outbounding strategy. They're into the sending DMs, sending videos. That's sort of what you're talking about, but it's mainly around rather than just selling your product. It sounds like it's just starting conversations, and we've combined that with natural curiosity. That's sort of is that the approach you're taking?
Yeah. Every I'm dealing with everything that happens before we start selling. When every sale starts with a conversation at some point in time, and it's ignorant to think that everybody that you talk to is going to be a potential buyer. So it's starting that initial conversation and taking them through a journey. And it's not everybody, right? Like, you can weed out the thorns from the roses pretty quick, but taking them on a journey that either gets you to a point of a conversation outside of the platform, on a video conference call or something, where you can actually have a discussion and tell them what you do, and tell them if you've got a solution for them, and find out what their challenges are, and get them to a point where you can say, I can help or I can't. Like, or you've just made a connection where you can, you just start a relationship. Someone might not need something now, but they might in the future. So it's, just managing the relationships before they're even in the CRM.
How important is social selling to your everyday salesperson? So for me, I use it as a bit of an extension of my activities. It's not it's for me, the go-to is still the phone, it's still the emails, it's still face-to-face meetings. And I use my LinkedIn as a tool, as a branding exercise. And I do still outbound and do what you're saying, start conversations. But it's not, I don't know, it's 20% of my activities. How much are you sort of advising clients that it should be more than, it should be the main thing that they're doing now as the world does become more digitalized? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I think that selling is done like you're describing, picking up the phone and talking to your existing accounts and all that kind of stuff. But it's from a new business perspective. Social selling allows you to explain yourself before you pick up the phone. So it's a quicker way to get into a funnel without having to cold call someone and say, this is who I am, this is what we do, can I help? It's picking up the phone call, and you have enough information about this person that by the time you pick up the phone call, you already know that they know what you can assume that they know a little bit about you, and taking the journey from there, getting your proactive sales activity working for you.
Yeah, I agree. It's like for me, it's a tool to make those cold calls warmer, or
Yeah.
makes to me, it's a no-brainer. But like, what would you say to some people who's maybe reluctant to use it, and also how do you define between like building sort of social marketing compared to social selling? Building a brand, say with consistent content and posts, compared to sending DMs, starting conversations. That's sort of how I define the two a little bit. How do you define social selling compared to social marketing? And what would you sort of say to maybe someone who's a bit reluctant to use it and do that sort of
Yeah.
stuff?
I like to think of it as a skill set that sits somewhere in between marketing and sales. So it's not a marketing it's not just marketing, it's not just sales, it's a new skill set that sits somewhere in between, and it needs to be developed. So for someone who's considering getting into it, it is, I think it's very personal to you. I think it's a chance to share yourself and get a bit of a creative process into your journey, and just, but you can't expect salespeople to be marketers, right? Like if you look at my content, like I'm not a marketer. Like I just have fun with it and focus on being present and getting the conversations going. And some of the stuff, like me mowing a lawn and just having a chat, it just provides a discussion point. Like
You're just being you, right? That's what I always advise people. Don't try and be someone else. Just be yourself.
Definitely don't try to be someone else. Like I honestly think that the first step to social selling is doing what I did at the beginning of my journey, and doing an audit of yourself and separate yourself from the product, and what are your strengths and weaknesses and what are you bringing to the table. If you can define that clearly, the rest of it, you're no longer competing with a different business or a different products. You're now competing on a personal level, because people want to work with the person that you're presenting yourself as.
Yeah. What would you say? You don't have to share everything, but what would you say your main strengths and weaknesses are? If we sort of pinpoint that to social selling, like we've been talking about, what have you done to allow yourself to be successful, and what character traits have you mainly demonstrated that have allowed you to be successful in this particular sort of field?
I think for me, the relationship part of it is the big one for me. So I think that I'm particularly strong at engaging with people and building relationships. So when it comes to the content and stuff that I make, I've got heaps of room to improve. Like I think it's a constant refining thing, and I'm going through the process myself as well. But I don't like when you're talking about personal branding, like I think it's sort of interchangeable when you're talking about making content. Personal brand exists not only as the person that you're projecting, but personal branding really makes a statement when you deliver on the other end. So that's sort of that's where I try to lend my strength in the social selling thing. Just really following through with that relationship piece.
One of your posts caught my eye the other day. Is around using video in your social selling strategy. Why do you feel that video is so important and effective when it comes to social selling?
Video, you have to remember where you're meeting people, and you are meeting people behind a screen. Every time that you come up against someone, they're sitting behind a screen. So video gives you the opportunity to break that barrier and give an insight into who you are, what kind of person you are, and break that barrier. Like think about it like in a movie, right? The character of a movie, when they look towards the camera and all of a sudden they break the fourth wall and they're speaking directly at you and you feel like you're in on their little secret. That's what video does that the other stuff doesn't. It's a more active, it's a more engaging and active way to get your personality across that breaks that initial barrier, and makes you relatable. Yeah.
No, I completely agree. And if you look back to sort of your journey on this so far, you mentioned you're not perfect, you're still learning. What have you sort of learned from the social selling side of things? What have been some of the main lessons? If you could maybe go back to yourself a little while back and say, hang on, just change that, don't do this, don't do that. And this could be maybe advice to someone who's looking to start a little bit. from your journey from doing this, what would you advise a slightly younger or junior, less experienced version of yourself?
I think things have changed quite a bit with relation to LinkedIn. Like people are using it a lot more and stuff like that. But I think everybody struggles with this at the beginning, like getting over the anxiety of putting yourself out there and what people are going to think of you. And at the end of the day, like LinkedIn's pretty safe. Like if you're putting yourself out there on Instagram or something, I'd be a little bit more, I don't know if I'd have the same opinion.
Yeah.
But I think for me, the advice that I give to myself is just jump in the deep end straight away and start making video, start putting pictures of myself up. I mean, when it comes to content, there's so many different ways, there's so many different forms that you can do it. You know, I don't post a video every day. I just make sure that I fit one in at least every week. So that would be my advice. I spent way too long just trying to get traction with text posts, and yeah, I think that the text posts don't reflect your personality nearly as well.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what we were just talking about. Use video more as much as you can.
Yeah.
I know you don't. This next question, I appreciate you don't have a crystal ball, but if you look towards the future from a social selling standpoint, the kind of discussions you think you might be having with clients in the future, your business is called tomorrow. If we talk about the future, what are maybe some of the trends or ways you see social selling evolving, maybe in the next few years? What are your sort of predictions on that one?
I think that's probably from a more organizational point of view. I think that businesses are going to, sales teams are going to get thinner. And I think that there's going to be roles within the business where people are out there doing the social selling thing, but then having to align different people within the sales cycle with different sort of sales functions within a business to lead a customer through a project or something like that. Yeah, I think sales teams are probably going to have to align more with marketing, and I think salespeople are going to have to develop new skill sets. Like, yeah.
How much of it is it the salespeople themselves? Is it their responsibility to be like, this is maybe the way things are going. I need to develop this myself. I need to learn how to do this myself. Or is it management responsibility to, I don't know how they do it, set KPIs around it, or, to provide the training? Because a lot of, I guess, sales managers, leaders maybe aren't experienced in it. That's something I think about a lot. How much is it the salesperson responsibility to do this themselves? Because a lot of the time, we talk about videos and personal branding. That's themselves. That's not the company.
Yeah.
That's their own personal. The company can't do that for them in a way. So, what are your thoughts on that?
I think the company has a role to educate themselves on social selling. I think that they should provide training, but I also don't think that this is for everyone. Like, at the end of the day, what this is the intersection between professional and personal, and I think that it needs to come from the salesperson putting up their hand and showing initiative to actually, make it worthwhile, because it is a commitment. And if you don't have the drive and energy to build it into your daily practice, then it's not going to go anywhere at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that answers your question.
Yeah. And maybe as those salespeople, as time goes on, they become managers. Maybe things change if they are. Maybe.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, we're at a transition phase right now. Like, like senior management. I can't remember what it was. It was like, I think it was like 50% of the workforce at the moment is now a millennial, right? And then we've got Gen Z coming through. So we're seeing we're seeing from a generational perspective the older guys retiring essentially, and I think that even myself as a millennial, you sort of like some people are old school, and then some people are taking initiative and trying to do it. But I think that in the future, like social selling is not going to be a new thing, right? Like there will be a defined training and there will be a defined strategy. We're just at the crossroads at the moment where we're in the process of doing the education piece.
Yeah. Some people have something. Some companies are at that point where they've got strategies in place. Some are sort of in the middle, just sort of winging it.
Yeah.
Some are doing nothing.
Yeah, but I mean, you look at especially like the tech industry, SaaS. There's some businesses out there that that's how they're launching their businesses, and they're doing it very, very well. And it's just a matter of some of the more traditional industries catching up, and it will be a lag, like anything. Like there'll be a lag.
This occurred to me. Who are you targeting then? Are you targeting businesses that sort of don't have any presence or have no idea what they're doing? Or are you targeting businesses that have tried something, have got a strategy in place, but it's not maybe getting results? Is there like an ideal client for you?
An ideal client for me would be someone who's tried and failed. I'm working with the people I'm working with at the moment they're in different camps. But everybody's tried at some level. I'm not trying to pick up people and sell them with a golden ball, because my personal experience doing that internally, it hasn't worked.
That makes sense. And if we sort of come full circle to the back to your own business and ambitions, we've talked about sort of how you've got there, what you're doing currently. If we talk a bit about the future, what are some of your goals for the business? Where do you want to take it in the next few years, say?
Yeah. Look, I'm still very early on in the process. So I have an idea of where I think this can all go, which is more like change management, organizational stuff. But I don't want to put up a barrier and aim for that just yet, because I don't know if that's where this is meant to end up. So I'm just keeping my opportunities open and sort of going with the flow for the moment, because I feel like being pig-headed about it at the second's just it's not the right go.
I think, it's also, you can set yourself up for failure if you sort of say, I want to be doing, or I've done this by X amount of time, and you haven't, and if you don't do it, it doesn't help.
I mean, it's just me, right? There's so many different balls to juggle. I mean, beyond, like, I've had developing a product, that's something new I've never really done before. Then you've got all the business back end stuff that I've never done before. Like every day is a learning day, and I've got balls to juggle when I'm dealing with personal stuff on the side. And just take a breath and just let it go. I think otherwise you get too stressed. And like I said, the beginning of the year was a very low point for me, and I just want it to grow as naturally and as flexibly as possible.
And that leads me nicely onto my sort of closing question. It's around the idea of, if you talk about not being stressed and talk about the balance, and you talk about figuring out what you want to do, it's the idea of success. So what is the sort of reason, and this can be personal, professional, what is the reason that you're getting out of bed and doing this every day? What is success, and what is driving you right now?
It might sound like a bit of a wanky answer, but I think it's just a sense of fulfillment, right? Like without sugarcoating anything, like I was incredibly depressed. So I've found myself now at a point where I'm, like life's a journey, and as long as you're enjoying it, um, I think that's success. So right now I'm feeling happy as Larry, and
Yeah.
I'm getting some wins on the board, and maybe I aim higher in the future, but right now I'm happy with that.
Well, that's the main goal, mate. That's the number one goal for me. If you're
Yeah,
happy, if you wake up in a day enjoying what you're doing, you're happy, then you're winning in my eyes.
yeah, I completely agree.
Absolutely love it, mate. That's a really nice way to wrap up this episode. Thank you very much for joining me, Brad. Really enjoyed that. Really appreciate you sharing everything you did. Plenty of, for me, actionable takeaways, all things social selling. Plenty of great ideas around the future, and really nice to just share, hear how you got to where you are today. So, thank you very much for joining me today, and you're doing some great things, and I wish you all the best in with the new venture in the next few months.
I
Brad Eather,
appreciate it.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Cheers.